My name is Jeremy Devens, and this is the Quietmind Astrology Podcast with the weekly horoscope from June 21st to June 28th, 2024. And if you're new to the podcast, get your free Vedic birth chart at quietmindastrology.com, and you can find out where your placements are. And I'll talk about how the transits will affect you personally. I'm actually working on a total beginner's guide. So if you're a total beginner to me, that's okay. And you can probably follow along and apply what I'm sharing, even if you don't know anything about astrology yet. And for those of you who are very experienced and like the people in my mentorship programs and going very deep in astrology, then I also will provide some deeper insights throughout too. So I like to try to teach to all levels here and make this very applicable to your life using this amazing technology of Vedic astrology. So this week we've got a few significant things going on. I talked about a little last week, the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year and sort of the middle point of the year. And then in the southern hemisphere, that's the winter solstice, so the longest night of the year. So it's a 6 month journey we go on from the beginning of 2024 to now the middle of 2024, making this a great time to pause and reflect on what's going on, what is working in your life, what's not working, and take a little time to just center and connect to that and what is true for you. So I spent a good amount of time yesterday. Yesterday was the solstice here as I'm recording this, just laying in the hammock, just watching the ocean, doing nothing, and just letting my mind sort of settle. And one of my favorite techniques, as many of you know, I teach yoga as well, and that includes a lot of breath work. So one of my favorite techniques to just get into a calmer state very quickly, like if you're feeling kind of stressed out, you're in like the beta brain waves, which are more active and engaged and alert. You want to get more to the alpha brain waves, which are more relaxed and present, but not as intense. So that is just to take a deep breath in through the nose. And you can do this now as you're listening. Just breathe in through the nose, full breath. And when you can't breathe anymore, breathe in just a little bit more. So fully expanding your lungs. And then just a relaxed exhale through the mouth. So if you just do that a couple of times, if you want to get into a more relaxed state right now, that is a great way to start to shift your energy pretty dramatically and pretty rapidly. So it's just a full inhale all the way to the top, and then try to breathe in just a little more, and then an exhale through the mouth. So that's something you can do anytime you want to shift your state quickly into more of a alpha brain waves, more of a relaxed state. But typically, like as we go through our days listening to this, you're probably more in the beta brain waves. And when you're getting stuff done, you're being productive, handling tasks, you're typically more in that state. But the alpha brainwaves help us get into more of this relaxed, receptive, creative kind of mode. And then we can even get down to the delta brainwaves while we're awake into more deep relaxation, like you might experience in Shavasana in a yoga practice, or if you kind of just chill out in a hammock and watch nature for a while. So this is a time of year, wherever you are, to just take that little pause. If you haven't already yesterday or sometime this weekend, take a little pause for yourself and let the dust settle. Let the energy sort of settle to what is present in your life, what is in your environment. And this is something I do regularly. Just kind of look around, look in my space and the spaces around me. Is there anything that needs attention here? Is there anything I want to change? Are things how I want them? Is there something I want to adjust or shift? Looking around your digital spaces, your physical spaces, your relationships, your health. You know, I always talk about these four aims of life: health, wealth, relationships, and purpose. And if we are aligned and happy and fulfilled and in our purpose and in alignment in those areas, everything else tends to go a lot better. And if we're struggling in one of those areas, it can really tend to affect all the others as well. So, one of those areas might require a little more attention right now as you look at your life and just reflect on what's going on. And you know the answer. Only you really know what needs attention and where that is for you. So if it's relationships, you might look to things like your seventh house in your chart and what's going on there, what transits are happening there. For example, if you have Aquarius in your seventh house, that means that you are a Leo ascendant. You have Aquarius in the seventh house of relationships. That means Saturn is there right now. Since about 2 years now, Saturn has been there over your relationships, bringing major challenges, opportunities to grow, innovative ways of approaching your relationship. It can bring more commitment and depth there. Right. So this is just an example, very specific example for if anyone has a Leo rising and that puts Aquarius in your seventh house. And that means that right now Saturn is transiting over there. And I know quite a few Leo risings actually who have been going through, like at the beginning of this, they went through a big breakup. And now they're going through this exploration of what do they really want in relationships, feeling a bit blocked, struggling in their dating life. And Saturn brings obstacles and tests for us to grow and mature to help us clarify what we really do want in life and what's worth the long term, what's worth fighting for and continuing on and persevering for. So again, this is just one very specific example for Leo ascendants. If you look at your if you're looking at your relationships, you've got Saturn there in the seventh house. But let's say something totally different, like if you have Taurus in your seventh house in your relationships, that's Jupiter is transiting there right now. For everyone who is a Scorpio ascendant, Jupiter is transiting over your seventh house of relationships, bringing potential for new relationships, optimism, hopefulness. This can be a wonderful time for finding a partner and for women finding a husband in heterosexual relationships. And Jupiter brings opportunities, but sometimes too many opportunities. So, with every transit, there's a possible positive, negative, and neutral expression to explore. And if you notice more of the negative stuff coming out, you can emphasize more of the positive. So, the negative side would be like for Scorpio ascendants with Jupiter over your seventh house right now in transits in Taurus, you might have too many opportunities or even naivety of maybe being too open minded, too optimistic about what's going on in relationships. So, this could be an opportunity to bring more spirituality into the relationships because the positive side of Jupiter and Taurus and the relationships, Jupiter is the guru, the one who brings light into the darkness. So, you could be revealing parts of yourself in relationships, being more vulnerable and bringing more spiritual elements into your relationships, like learning about different spiritual paths, like maybe Vedanta philosophy you're interested in, or tantric philosophy, or something that is relational as well, where you can explore together. So, again, that's just another very specific example of how it's playing out in the current transits and things going on. But you always want to know where your rising and moon are in your chart so you can apply the transits to your own life. So, last episode, I talked about the full moon happening in Mula Nakshatra in Sagittarius on Saturday, June 22nd. And that is for everybody bringing out this opportunity to go to the deeper roots of what is true for us. And Mula is ruled by the deity Nriti. Nriti is very similar to Kali. It's kind of less known, but most people know about Kali if you get into the spiritual path, the goddess of destruction, which is like the feminine component to the Shiva energy. The masculine side of that would be Shiva. But gender is not. It's not about gender. It's just about the yin and yang. It's about the Shiva energy. The destruction of Shiva is a little different than Kali. Shiva is kind of like the yoga practices, like the discipline, the tapasya, to do a lot of discipline kind of practice. The Shiva energy is a bit more chaotic and just like, let's stir things up and let's see what happens. And the Nriti energy is kind of like that. It can bring some sorrows and challenges. Again, really look at where Sagittarius is in your chart. And that area of life is where this necessary destruction and transformation is coming in for you in your chart. So, for example, the Gemini ascendants would have this in your seventh house. And me as a Gemini moon, I have this in my seventh house. So, this Nriti energy, this Mula energy of transformation, change, needing to let things go and maybe let some things die into your relationships, into your seventh house. Also, your business partnerships and contracts is seventh house stuff as well. So there could be some necessary changes in relationship dynamics in your life for Gemini ascendant specifically. But let's say Sagittarius is in your eighth house of personal growth and transformation. Now, this can be a hugely transformational time where you're needing to let go of a lot of parts of your identity. And it's going to be a powerful time for doing any sort of ceremonial work, rituals, transformational work, things like that. Again, those are some specific examples, but on the general level for everybody, this is a transformational time where you can get to the root of some deep issues in your life and your beliefs and your values of what you do really value and what you want in your life. And it may be time for some old beliefs to die and old ways of doing things to let them go so you can create space for what is in alignment. And this is on the Ardra Mula axis. So every nakshatra has an opposite, not always exactly perfect opposites because it's 27 is an odd number, so they don't divide evenly like that. But there is Ardra Mula. There's an Ardra Mula axis that when that has happened throughout history with Rahu and Ketu being in Rahu and Ardra, Ketu and Mula, that's when the 2020 pandemic happened. That's when 9/11 happened. That's when Chernobyl happened. So major disastrous kind of destructive events in society when Rahu and Ketu are there. Rahu and Ketu are the karmic nodes and they bring major shifts in society with their transits. But this is not Rahu Ketu, so it's not as intense. It's the sun and moon, so it's more of our internal state, our solar and lunar energies, our yin and yang energies within ourselves, of our desire for structure, organization, and systems in our lives that needs a bit of a shakeup, needs a new structure. And Mula, our emotional world, needs maybe some big emotional release. And if it doesn't come now, it'll likely come next month when everything moves into Cancer, which brings a more emotional awareness and attunement and emotional access coming up. So that is a little look at the full moon and Mula. Again, I talked about it more last week. You can go into that last episode. But the next transit is on Sunday, June 23rd. So I move forward. If you're watching the video, I'm showing things. If you're not watching the video, it's okay. I'm still explaining everything I'm seeing. But as you see, Mercury moves into Punarvasu Nakshatra, a little bit outside of Ardra. Ardra is the storms. The deity associated with Ardra is Rudra, the god of storms. So wherever Ardra is in the chart, there's a necessary storm there to cleanse things out and clear things out. So for me, on a personal level, I'm a very Mercury dominant person, and Mercury is the most dominant graha all week this week. So I can relate to this energy. I feel this energy a lot. And with Ardra, Mercury and Ardra, our learning, our intelligence, our thinking into change, some level of a storm coming through to clear things out, wash things away. So I've gone through this huge clearing process, literally all of my notes, everything I have digitally over the past 5 years since I last really did a big process like this, clearing it out, cleaning things out. So that's how it's looked for me as a very Mercury dominant person myself. So you might not feel this as much. It might not be as relevant to you if Mercury's not as dominant in your chart. But this is a good time to clear things out, to get rid of clutter. Physical clutter has never been a real issue for me, but the digital clutter certainly has. So I can really accumulate a lot of notes and ideas and things that I do for the programs I offer and the clients I work with. And I've simplified it all down as about as compact as possible, cut away thousands of notes and consolidated lots of things. So that's a good use of this energy, like clearing out clutter in your mind and your thinking process. This could be books that you don't read anymore, notes that you've taken that you never acted on, that you now act on or discard, just like clearing out the mess. And as Mercury moves into Punarvasu, that's the return of the light. So now that is bringing in more of this energy of a new dawn, a new beginning, and new possibilities, where Mercury and Punarvasu can now start to bring our ideas and our thoughts into new ways of thinking, new potential. It's a hopeful, optimistic kind of energy. And Punarvasu is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in Taurus and Rohini right now. So, an opportunity to learn about wealth, an opportunity to learn about family and your values and improving your values. This is happening for just 6 days. So, really throughout this week, from Sunday, June 23rd until 29th. And then Mercury move into Pushya on the 30th. So, we'll talk about that later in this episode. So, while it's here throughout this week ahead, learning, taking on new ideas. And if it feels like blocked, not open to that yet, maybe you've got some of this Mercury and Ardra work to finish up of like clearing out the past, getting rid of old stuff, clearing out the clutter, deleting things you don't need, and now creating space for Mercury and Punarvasu. Great time for having clearing conversations as well. If there's something you need to get off your chest or talk about or express, great time for doing any sort of breath work that's going to clear you out. The neti pot this time can be very clearing as well. I've used the neti pot for many years. Even if you don't think you've got anything in there in your nose blocking the flow of prana and energy, the neti pot will probably surprise you of what's in there. And I've gotten into this routine of going into the ocean every day where I'm at in Mexico and just letting the ocean be my neti pot, and the waves hit me and it goes right through my sinuses. So it clears it out. And I haven't used the neti pot in a while because I'm going in the ocean. So if you live by the ocean, that's an awesome experience, an awesome way to clear out the nose. I also have super intense waves here, so that's a big part of that too. But otherwise, neti pot's a much more gentle way to do it and also very refreshing. So even if you don't have anything built up, you think doing the neti pot over this week can really help clear out the flow of prana. Mercury has a lot to do with this kind of energy, a flow of energy. It moves very fast. And in our modern times, everything moves very fast. You're probably doing multiple things while listening to this podcast. And we're all usually multitasking now in modern life, doing multiple things. So that Mercury energy is very strong for a lot of us, and it's dominant this week. So keeping the flow of energy going through the nose, and especially as we're in the transition of the seasons now, that's when Ayurveda says all diseases begin in the transition of the seasons. We got to be extra mindful of our health practices and sleep, exercise, clearing out the sinuses, scraping your tongue in the morning. These Ayurvedic practices are essential, like foundation of my health practices. And I've been fortunate to have incredible health through most of my life. And as a youngin, I did have some big health issues and I was sick quite a bit. But once I started to take care of myself and understand that drinking 3 sodas a day was not healthy, and stopped doing that, I started to get a lot better. So that was my early teens. I didn't know anything. But now, knowing what I know, I would say doing these health practices are going to be very beneficial throughout this transit. And then on all the way to next week, really, Friday, June 28th. So I'm going to go ahead into next weekend as well. And then in the next episode, I'll talk about Saturn retrograde for all signs. This is a big transit. And then I'll talk about the July horoscope. We're already into July. So just looking ahead now. So we got this weekend, full moon in Mula, and then Mercury in Punarvasu. And then next Friday, we got Venus meeting up with Mercury in Punarvasu. So what does that mean for us? Well, Venus, the planet of love, beauty, harmony, desire, creativity, artistic expression, moves into Punarvasu, which again brings us renewal energy. So Venus and Ardra is giving us this opportunity to clear away things in our space that are not aesthetically pleasing, not beautiful, that we don't want anymore. And now Venus and Punarvasu from Friday, June 28th gives us an opportunity to refresh our appearance, getting new haircut, maybe new beauty products, new clothes, new jewelry, new interior design, new things in the garden. But until then, we're still in this time throughout this week ahead to Venus and Ardra pull out the weeds in the garden, clear out your spaces, throw away stuff you don't need, go through this sort of cleansing process, purifying process in your space. Then when we get to Venus and Punarvasu on June 28th, for 10 days, It's a time to improve and enhance our beauty, our aesthetics, our spaces, getting some new clothes, things like that. And I never thought I'd wear Speedos, but it's actually very practical when I'm going in the ocean every day. So I feel this energy coming. Usually, as an astrologer, I feel like I'm about a week ahead of like what happens in my life is like what's about to happen in the astrology. And those of you who are very tuned to energy and stuff like this, you might feel that as well. I talked to a lot of astrologers who say this too, but I went and bought a few pairs of Speedos, and it just very, very helpful in swimming. And yeah, just I just prefer that now. So now I'm that kind of person, I guess. I've changed my identity. Let some old identities die. Like I thought I would never be this beach guy, but that's what I've become now, and I enjoy it a lot. So Venus and Punarvasu also brings us new creative expression. So I haven't played much music in the recent weeks and actually a couple months now. So I'm going to be getting more into this musical creative mode with Venus and Punarvasu. Some of you may know I was a musician for a long time and just kind of drifted away from that into more of this teacher role and astrology and yoga role. But I still love making music and love playing. And Venus and Punarvasu brings out a more playful musical side, which even if you don't play an instrument, just putting on music you love to sing to is great. If you want to explore different instruments, there's like things like ukulele are usually pretty approachable, or a keyboard. If you don't have any musical background, I know lots of people who like want to get into music and then they end up getting a ukulele to start because there's less strings, it's simpler, smaller, easier to play to start learning. So that's a fun way to start learning music. And things like percussion instruments are usually pretty fun and easy to learn. Like marimba is super fun. So if there's a musical instrument you've been curious about trying, this is a fun time to explore that, or singing more, or in some way being more creative and artistic. Maybe it's for you, it's more visual arts and you like to paint or do photography. This is a wonderful time to sort of renew your visual expression and visual hobbies, if it's that, or any sort of artistic expression. Venus is the arts. So June 28th for 10 days, getting into early July, rekindling your love of artistic expression, reimagining your aesthetics, your beauty, haircuts, grooming, things like this, jewelry, new clothes, fashion, things like that. Wonderful time for renewal in those areas. Then on Saturday, June 29th, Mercury moves on into Cancer. And now we start into this emotional chapter of the year. Wonderful time for starting to express and communicate your emotions more. It's actually going to be there for 19 days in Cancer. And this is going June 29th, now into early mid July. Mercury, communication, intelligence, learning, in Cancer, emotional expression, and the nurturing qualities within all of us, the maternal qualities within all of us. Great time for improving your emotional intelligence, having deep conversations, doing processes like journaling, therapy, astrology readings, things like this. I am fully booked now through the summer for my readings, but I will open up again probably late fall. So if you're looking to get a reading with me, you can get on the wait list now at quietmindastrology.com/reading. And I do prioritize, like if I get a sudden opening, I'll go to that list and just email you, hey, I got an opening. Are you available this time or this time? So if you do want to get a reading sooner, you can get on the priority list at quietmindastrology.com. But if not with me, then just doing your own studies. If people ask a lot, like, what's the best astrology book I recommend to start? Well, eventually I'll write one. But until then, I highly recommend Beneath the Vedic Sky by William Levesey and Astrology Yoga by my mentor, Matab Benton. So those are great starting points if you're wanting to go deeper into understanding yourself. Not even starting points, like they're good lifelong references to have on your shelf. So Beneath the Vedic Sky and Astrology Yoga, well worth it, and great resources if you want to go deeper in understanding your own astrology and kind of who you are. And then it starts to open up this world of curiosity about who other people are and how they work. And that's part of the Mercury and Cancer energy of Mercury is a curious, explorative, inquisitive energy. Into Cancer is like, how do you operate? What do you think? And if you have children, then this is something you see a lot in children, of course, the inquisitive energy. But as a parent, to be inquisitive and curious about them and not assume that you have all the answers. And one of my favorite things about being around kids is just how differently they think because they're not totally conditioned to our social norms. So there's that sort of playful, curious way, and they'll say things that you just totally don't expect, but are brilliant and interesting. And this is a time where we can kind of connect to our more curious, playful energy and maybe find some unique and creative ways of expressing ourselves emotionally through the arts with the Venus and Punarvasu energy and as our childlike energy coming out more. So it's a wonderful transit for this kind of work. And if you feel blocked emotionally, getting some sort of support with that, journaling, therapy, astrology readings, these kind of things can be wonderful. And breath work, actually, for me, I do a lot of intense breath work, like emotionally, I'm just way more open. So that's a powerful way too. Mercury has a lot to do with breath work, Cancer, the emotions. So if you feel blocked, doing things like holotropic breathing, or any sort of pranayama practices. I have some on the Quiet Mind Yoga podcast you can check out. Alternate nostril breathing. It's one I teach and practice a lot and recommend just for centering. But if you're wanting like an emotional release or breakthrough, things like breath of fire are going to be more powerful. Kapalabhati breathing, also known as breath of fire. And holotropic breathing is pretty intense. Meant to move a lot of energy. It can be a little too much sometimes. I do recommend you have guidance with that. There are like YouTube videos and stuff you can find with that. And if those of you who are in the Quiet Mind Yoga membership, there's some videos in there as well, so different breathwork practices. But any breathwork is going to be helpful at this time. And then on June 29th, Saturn moves retrograde. So this is one of the big transits of the year, and it happens every year for about 5 months. Saturn goes retrograde. So, not the most unusual transit for sure, not the rarest transit, but Saturn being retrograde in Aquarius is rare. That's only going to happen roughly every 30 years, every 27 years or so, that, Saturn will be in Aquarius and then it will go retrograde. So, what does it mean for you on a personal level and a global level? I'll talk about that more in the next episode because it's such a big one. I want to go sign by sign and let you know where it's happening in your chart and what it means for you. But the real short version right now is Saturn goes retrograde. It's time to go back over the structures you've set up in your life. And as it's gone forward, you're establishing new structures throughout the beginning of 24, establishing new routines, new systems, new habits. And then Saturn goes retrograde. Now you start to reassess those things, discard what's not working, keep what is working, go deeper into your own self exploration, your own self awareness, and it's time to review, revise, revisit, relinquish things that are not working, change and improve, and make more of the things that are working. And it's in Purva Bhadrapada, which again, we'll talk about this more in the next episode, specifically what it means and how to work with it. But the short version for now highlights just time to slow down a bit and go back over things, review things. Not necessarily the best time to start new routines, habits, and structures out of the blue. Like if you've never done this before, it might not be the best time to start that new habit. Like I keep considering starting a surfing habit here because I'm by the ocean. There's surf lessons easily accessible. But I get the sense if I start it now when Saturn going retrograde, trying to start a new routine of this surf lessons, it's going to conflict with my other routines and structures in my life. And there's not quite the space for it until this goes direct again in 5 months. So this would be the time to really hone in on my like daily routines, my processes, my structure in my life, and set it up in a way that feels really good and spacious. And it has that sort of feng shui to it. Feng shui is actually a big part of my life and something I don't talk about as much as I have practiced it in my life. But it means wind, water, essentially. So it's like getting the sense of flow in your life. Like, that feeling. Like, oftentimes, a lot of people will clean on like a Sunday morning, and you get this feeling in your home where it's like just feels really good to be there. That's that sort of energy that we're looking to create now with Saturn retrograde. It's like you're clearing things out, weeding the garden, creating space, letting go of old patterns so that you got that feeling in your life where it's like, it just feels good. And like, if you go into spaces like this, it just feels good and it has that sort of flow. And then if you let things like pile up, you let dishes pile up, you let sort of the garbage bins pile up, there's this different feeling in your home where it's like it doesn't feel good. It feels okay. It's, yeah, it's livable, but there's kind of this like heaviness, is kind of this stuck energy there. And you clean all that out, clean it up. You get all the cobwebs out of the corners, etc. Clean the dishes, and now you're back into this like flow energy. So Saturn retrograde is inviting us to look at where we can bring that into our lives and our structures. Again, I'll say more in the next episode, but June 30th, Mercury moves on into Pushya. So it's been in Punarvasu, which goes from Gemini to Cancer, bringing this renewal energy. Now into Pushya is this deeper emotional awareness. So now Mercury and Pushya, a great time to again be doing this deep therapeutic work, the healing work, and more in this Pushya. Now it is more of this like healing stuff. So like you start to go in a direction in Punarvasu, and then you start to see where you have room to grow and where things might not be able to grow in the way that you want. So Punarvasu is like optimism, hopefulness. Let's start this. Let's explore that. And then Pushya is where you start to feel something about it. It's like, well, you feel really excited, or maybe you feel insecure, or maybe you feel doubtful that you can actually have what you want. So Mercury in Pushya gives us this opportunity for 8 days from June 30th until July 7th to start to look at the emotional landscape of what you want and how you're approaching it. And in so much of the Vedic text, they talk about how our thoughts create our reality. And this is sort of a new age thought that's kind of a new idea within the last 100 years. But in the Vedic teachings, that's been there for thousands of years. Our thoughts are what really shape our reality. And our thoughts actually precede our emotions, right? So, like somebody could pinch you and you could say, oh, that hurts, you're being mean. Or you could interpret it as, oh, they're actually being playful. And I can see why they're, why they did that to be playful. So our thoughts are shaping how we experience something. If we see it as hurtful, now we get angry. Or if we see it as playful, now we get playful and we play back. Right. So that's kind of a silly example, but you know what I mean, of how our thoughts start to shape our reality and not just what's around us, but actually our internal emotional landscape. And if we have that perspective of the big picture of things, then we can see whatever's happening emotionally as an opportunity to grow. So again, this week, Mercury moves into Punarvasu. Now we start to see this hopefulness, optimism about our ideas, what we want to create in the world. And that's going to have a feeling response start to arise in us as we move in that direction. And that's Mercury and Pushya for 8 days from June 30th to explore that emotional landscape and feel those feelings. Maybe it's excitement, maybe it's fear, maybe it's anger, maybe it's hurt. Maybe there's something there that needs to be felt so that we can express ourselves more, so we can create more, so we can express our ideas. Mercury's a lot about ideas and our thoughts. So, a great time for doing therapeutic kind of work, journaling kind of work, and getting internal into our emotional landscape of what is there, what needs attention, and what we want to create going forward with that awareness. So, if you found this episode helpful, take a moment to leave a review in Apple Podcast and share it with a friend, even if they're not super into astrology. Just sort of an energetic weather report that astrology is the tool I'm using to see the energy, but so much of it is also informed by my real life experience with clients I work with every week and just observations through many years of doing this work and many charts, looking at charts and seeing patterns. So it's really not so much woo woo, which it is, but it also is so much research based. And I'm a big research nerd, and everything I'm saying is based on observation. So if you enjoyed the podcast, share it with a friend, maybe notice what happens for you this week as we have this Mercury dominant energy throughout this next week. Great time for learning and all these things I talked about this week. And then we'll move into a Saturn dominant energy at the end of this, towards next week afterwards, and starting to put some of these this deeper awareness into our structures in our life, into our emotional landscape, what we want to create, how we want to express ourselves with the transits happening from June 21st to June 28th, 2024. All right. Thank you for listening, and look forward to sharing more with you next time on the Quiet Mind Astrology Podcast.